Hello to all my friends in Italy. Italy's played a major role in futures visions over many hundreds of years. In the 12th century we have Joachim of Fiore, a Sicilian monk, who developed a prophecy of 3 great ages on earth. What was very unique and remarkable about his prophecy was that he came up with the idea of human agency, which is a very modern concept. The 15th century visions and drawings of Leonardo da Vinci provided prototypes for inventions that were only developed hundreds of years later. Example, the helicopter. I'm Jennifer Gidley, the author of the book The Future, A Very Short Introduction, and I'm speaking to you from Australia. I'm delighted that my book has been translated into Italian, and I want to sincerely thank Roberto Paura, the Italian Institute for the Future, and Vincenzo Torre, the translator. Il Futuro is the 3rd translation of the book after Turkish and Arabic, with Greek, Mandarin, German and Japanese on the way. The book draws on my 40 years experience as a psychologist and educator and over 20 years as an international futurist. For 8 years I was president of the World Future Studies Federation, a UNESCO partner and the global peak body for future scholars across 60 countries. The Federation was founded in Paris in 1973 by some of the world's leading futures thinkers and philosophers, activists, journalists. Their purpose was to democratise futures thinking. So why do we need a book about the future or future studies? We live in extremely challenging times, with the global pandemic now registering around 500 million cases and almost 6 million people have died. And climate crisis is really starting to bite home, with wildfires, superstorms, floods and sea level rise pointing to mass climate migration. Right now, sadly, we have a new war in Eastern Europe, with Russia invading peaceful Ukraine. So while the need to understand the future is more important than ever, we cannot predict the future. In fact, there's no one future at all that can be predicted. Only millions of possibilities. We now know there are as many possible futures as there are people on the planet. The idea of the one single predictable future comes from the Newtonian building block worldview, where everything is mechanical and predictable, including humans. This worldview was unravelled in the early 20th century with quantum physics, opening the doors for multiple possible futures. In Chapter 2, I discuss the shift from a predictable future, where humans are powerless, to multiple futures where humans have a choice and agency. In Chapter 3, I argue that prediction is only one of several approaches to future studies, all of which have been developed over the last 50 years as the field of future studies has developed. Another very important issue in the book, and particularly to me, is how do we design and create human-centred futures in the face of exponential technology development. In Chapter 4, I explore how the media trivialises future studies using trivial metaphors such as crystal balls and high-tech ones such as flying cars and robots. In Chapter 5, I discuss the centuries-old battle for human futures against mechanisation. This is most obvious today in the hype and hubris in Silicon Valley and its claims about creating artificial superintelligence and building satellite cities on Mars. What they're really doing amounts to human downgrading. By building into the technology addiction and distractibility, they are actually downgrading humanity. What we really need is to democratise and humanise futures thinking, thus empowering all of us to be agents of change in creating a better world for all. Finally, in Chapter 6, I focus on the grand global futures challenges, but I equally focus on the emerging weak signals or counter-trends, twists and surprises. These provide the opportunities for each of us to create alternative futures. No matter how grand, global or terrifying the challenges are, there are always opportunities for turning things around. That's where human agency comes in, harking back to Joachim of Fiore. So in summary, future studies can help us to better understand what is coming, but most importantly it can empower us to imagine, design and create better futures for all. Il Futuro, The Future, is my definitive work on future studies. I hope you enjoy reading it in Italian. Thank you.